So the first script we're going to be looking at today is the client script. Client scripts are one of the more commonly used scripts and also probably one of the most complex scripts to work with. So client scripts run in the browser on the client side and not the back-end server side. There are different script types that we can use for the back-end server side. The client script is the only script that will work on the front end, which is obviously where the user is working with NetSuite on the web page. The primary use of a client script is for responding to user interactions with record forms or web pages within a NetSuite UI. So an example of something I recently did was to throw an error message if I found a duplicate value in a field which belonged to another record. As soon as the user loads a record form in the edit mode, a page init event is fired. This page init event we can use to run code as the form is initialized before the user can interact with it. A simple way or simple use of it would be maybe we want to calculate a field value every time the record is loaded onto the user's browser. Then we'd use a page init event. So whenever the user changes any field in a form, a series of events will fire. The first one is a validate field event fires. This allows us to validate the value the user is trying to enter in the field. We can use this to either accept or prevent the change from taking place. So if we're not happy, we can, with a validate field event, we can throw an error message to tell the user, we're not happy, please fix this field. A field change event then fires to allow us to respond to the new value. So this is where we would then go and notify the user we are not happy with what they've put in the text box. And the last event that you have is a post sourcing event. This fires after any and all dependent fields are also sourced in their value. So once they all have a value, this will check all the fields. This allows us to respond to the change and make sure that we are working with all the correct data. This series of events fires no matter whether the user is changing a body field or a sublist field on the web page. Sublists get a little bit more complex. We have a few events that are available to us when we're working with sublists. So as the user makes changes to sublist lines, another series of events will be triggered. One event we have is the line init event. So this is fired whenever the user selects a new or existing line in the sublist. And this will fire before they are able to make any changes to the fields on the line. Again, this could be we want to run a calculation on a field on that line every time the user clicks on it. Whenever the user clicks the add button to add a new line to the sublist, a validate line event is fired that allows us to verify that the entire line is valid and can be added to the record. Whenever the user clicks the insert button to add a new line above an existing one, a validate insert event is fired. This works exactly like the validate line event. Whenever the user tries to remove a line, a validate delete is fired that allows us to either allow or deny the removal of a line. So we might not want to remove that line because it has a dependency on another record in NetSuite. So using a validate delete, we can prevent that. Lastly, after the appropriate validation event succeeds, a sublist change event is fired to allow us to respond to the completed line change. So the sublist changed event will only be fired once all the validations have taken place. So the line init event, it was happy. The validate line event, it was happy. The validate insert, and all of those, a validate delete. Only once it's happy with all of those will a sublist change event be fired. and we can obviously then go and say if we are happy or if we detect an error or something is wrong. Client scripts, when we save them, when a user clicks a save button on the record, a save record event is fired. This allows us to validate whether the record is valid and can be saved. We can either prevent the save from happening or allow it to proceed. So the save record event will, based on what we enter into that event as our code, we can run a series of validations, and if it is happy, we can obviously allow it to save, or we can prevent it from saving. The client script has the most events of any script type and has the most complex relationship between events.